welcome. My name's Cole Phelan, as a few of you have sat in on some of our webinars previously from MaiaGrazing, and absolute pleasure to have Mary O'Brien from your Bogmate, and also Stuart Austin, who's joining us from down in Yass, New South Wales, and Mary from Broken Hill. Thanks for being so generous to make both of your time available for us.
No problem, Cole.
Thanks, Cole.
We've still got people rolling in the door, so that's good. But we'll kick things off, and this is such an important webinar, and to be frank, I've been thinking a lot about it over the last week or so, and I think it's actually one of the most important webinars that MaiaGrazing has actually put on, and I think that we'll be doing a series, Walk With Me. That's what we're calling it. You've got to call it something, but ultimately it's about people's personal stories on how they've got to where they are now, and Stuart has been so incredibly kind and with his time and generosity, and with all of us, and many of us have been on webinars with Stuart before, talking about grazing management or education and leadership and all of these sorts of things. And progressively over time, Stuart has continued to just, I think, help all of us. And with that in mind, he's offered to talk about his challenges with mental health and his journey. And what I thought I might kick off by starting the session with really is something that Stuart actually wrote on Facebook just a couple of days ago. I only saw it today. And Stuart wrote, "I'll admit that I'm preparing for this webinar with some trepidation. However, my mental health has been challenged considerably at various times in my adult life. I now understand what triggers it and how to manage it to some degree. This will be a very frank and honest account of my journey, with the fundamental intention of helping others to feel comfortable and acknowledge when they might need a hand. We need to normalise the conversation. I couldn't think of a more worthy cause to be supporting than the tremendous work that Mary is doing with your Bogmate." So I think that says a huge amount about the preparation that everyone's put into today, particularly you, Stu. And I also want to just read out a couple of messages of support from people that responded to that.
Thank you, Cole. Thanks, MaiaGrazing, for the invitation. I will admit I actually volunteered this to share my story. When the guys at Maia contacted me about doing another webinar with them talking about grazing management and explain the concept of the Walk With Me series that they wanted to do, and as I scrolled through the email and I saw the charity that they were going to donate to, and I was immediately compelled to do this. I don't know why. It was some gut instinct said that this was the time and the place for me to share my story. I've never done it before. There's only very few people know what I've been through at different times, and they've been different people at different times. But my whole intention of doing this is to normalise the conversation, to try and help others feel comfortable to seek help when they need it, and recognise that more people than we know go through some shit, and it, it takes some courage to go and find some help and to talk to someone. But I would implore anyone who's ever in that position to never feels like this just doesn't feel right. I just don't feel that well, but that's normal, and there's a whole wealth of people that can help you with that, and there's nothing wrong with it. But that's probably a bit of a start. Cole, did you have anything else you wanted to finish with there? I mean, I can keep going, but
thanks, Stu. I dropped out there for a minute, so thanks for covering me for me as usual. So there's plenty of other comments there of support, and we're absolutely thrilled to have you. Mary, you're joining us from Broken Hill. You've been on a bit of a roadshow through South Australia, but apparently they're getting a bit of corona out down there, so you've hightailed it sort of back out of the state. So we'll get on to things a little bit later to talk about Are You Bogged Mate and learn a bit more about that story and how people on the call might be able to learn a bit more and also to share about your story. And if anyone's got any questions, Stu and Mary have been incredibly generous. Send them through, send any comments, and if you're more comfortable to do that after the fact as well, to get in touch and we can make contact with Stuart and Mary. But Stu, we'll get into your story now, but really, where are you now? You know, you wrote to me a few notes and you talked about, you know, life is peachy and you're living the dream. And that, I'll tell you what, that's just so wonderful to hear. So tell us a bit about where you are now, and then we'll go about how the journey, how you got to now.
Yeah, thank you, mate. There's probably, if there was just one other couple of things I could just make a note of before I did start that. One is that I do apologise if I swear a bit tonight. It's a topic I'm fairly passionate about, and I'll probably get rolling on and drop the odd F-bomb or something. So apologies in advance if no intentions of offending anyone. And the other is I actually wanted to dedicate tonight's chat to some very close friends of mine who have just experienced an extraordinary tragedy. Kate and Justin Boschhammer, and you know, again, you know, the experience that they've just gone through makes this conversation even more important. So this one's for you guys. Back to your point, Cole, of where I am now. We are living the dream. Extremely fortunate. I feel very blessed to be where I am now. And as I was thinking about it earlier, actually, one of my best mates, he and I used to yarn a lot, and he used to say, I think it came from Ray Hunt, who's a horseman, you got to ride through the shit to get to the good stuff. And as I've gone through life, I realised that's pretty bloody spot on. So I have ridden through a bit of shit, but I'm certainly at the good stuff now. Where, you know, I manage Wilmot Cattle Company, so look after 3 properties. I've got a tremendous team that manages all the on-ground work. I'm extremely well supported from above with Al and Eric and Aaron and plenty of others as well, you know, around me. People like Bart, the Maia crew. There's a whole team, you know, that I suppose I lean on at times and feel very well supported by, and I'm extremely grateful for that. Not at all forgetting my family, my wife Trish and 2 beautiful children, Harry and Polly, an endless source of motivation and inspiration for me, and support as well, and the rest of my extended family. And probably, you know, one of the things now is that I believe in myself and my own ability, which, you know, there's plenty of times when I doubted that. And I also finally feel like I'm at a point where others believe in me. And that was, you know, for a long while there, I doubted myself and I doubted others' belief in me. And that was quite challenging mentally to deal with. So that's a good place to be. And I also feel now that I've got a bit of a reasonably good handle on my mental health and when it's presenting a challenge, and you know, some of the triggers, and I know what to look for and what, you know, what I need to do and where I need to find some help. And probably the most recent example was the bushfires last year. That you know, it was essentially it was a traumatic event, and in reality, so I went and had a yarn to my GP, and I had she referred me on to a psychologist, and I had probably 3 appointments with a psychologist, I think. I'm not sure that I got anything, you know, a specific outcome from that, but the fact that I was able to just have a yarn and get a bit of this shit off my chest and just study, talk to someone in a very neutral environment, a very non-judgmental environment, you know, you can bare your soul, you can get over yourself and your own pride and ego and just have a yarn to someone. So that was great, and it was a fairly, you know, on the scale of bloody minor depression to extreme. It was relatively minor. It was a bit of a blip on the radar. So, and even in the last 12 months, there's been times when I've just had a shit day. I just felt in a bit of a funk, and now, and I kind of recognise that now, and I just think, what is it that I needed to do? And sometimes it's get outside, sometimes it's bloody go for a drive around the farm. Sometimes I need to get on the road for a day and just do some thinking and get on the phone and see something different. So it's, I don't doubt that I'll be challenged by it again, as I go through the rest of my life. But it's comforting now to know that I have found a way to, or I've got some strategies there or triggers that I'm aware of that tell me that I need to just step back and deal with this for a minute.
Yeah, and so that level of self-awareness that clearly you've been building and learning, the signs and learning how you've been able to successfully navigate your way through tough times, and it hasn't always been the case, has it? So you very kindly sort of shared with me quite a bit of detail, and so to go back in time now. So thankful that you're in a really good place, but to go back in time, I'll leave it up to you where you sort of really want to start. But you had some fairly fundamental challenges pretty early on in your professional career and time working. But I'm not sure. Do you want to start your story even further back than that?
Yeah. I'm not that young anymore, so we could be here all night if I'd told the whole story, every day of my life. But I thought about it quite a bit over the last few weeks, where I was going to start. And, basically I had a fairly normal childhood. Grew up in a small block outside Albury. Played plenty of sport, went to a state school. Was a bit of an outcast kid at school, I suppose. I was only a farm kid, really, amongst my friends, so I really couldn't wait to get the hell out of school, just for the fact that I was sort of a bit of a black sheep, I suppose. But through that period from, my teenage years, I spent most of that time with my grandfather, my grandparents, on their property in the Upper Murray. And at that point, he was, without me realising, that he was probably the biggest mentor in my life. And Maia, I could probably go so far as to say he has been the biggest mentor in my life. He had an extraordinarily profound impact on me. Anyone that knew my grandfather knew how much of a gentleman he was, and the standard with which, at which he kept himself. Straight as a board, looked a man in the eyes, had a firm handshake. He instilled in me an extremely hard work ethic. And he was incredibly humble. But he was also fairly traditional and quite stoic. And I know when I sort of started to go through a bit of shit, he was probably someone I wasn't comfortable to talk to because of that, because we had that, he had that sort of traditional upbringing, I suppose, or manner about him that you just had to tough it out. And so for better or worse, that was just that probably been something I've realised later in life is that sometimes that leads to putting too much pressure on ourselves and holding ourselves to too high a standard. And there's times in life we've actually just got to say, maybe I don't need to be that good because we put an extreme amount of pressure on ourselves. Anyway, so my grandfather, he was probably the greatest mentor through that period of my life. And then I spent the best part of 10 or 12 years up north in Canada for a few years, having a great time, worked bloody hard, pushed myself pretty hard to, into leadership positions and roles that challenged me all the time, into roles that were probably a little bit ahead of where I was at the time, but I wanted to challenge myself all the time. And I really, mental health probably didn't really enter my mind. I'd never been challenged by it. I'd never, I probably had some bad days, but I had never been in too bad a place. And then 2010, I came back from Canada, and I had 3 years in Canada, and I came home and kind of was a big dose of reality that I'd been over there having a whale of a time, been involved in a lot of things, had a bit of a profile, for want of a better term. I started a business over there, sending young Aussies over there to work on farms and bringing Canadians out here to work on farms. And we're working in a few other countries. I had a great business partner over there. Anyway, we got to a point where we were going to establish a business that was going to upskill non-farm kids. So some of the backpackers that land in Australia, giving them some rural training and vetting them and screening them a bit in terms of their attitude and their work ethic, and then finding them jobs as well. I didn't have much money. I didn't know much about business, and put everything I had into it. Had some legal challenges involved there as well, and it didn't go very well at all. Basically sent me broke. I was thankful I kind of had an arrangement with a station up there, the Lyons family at Wombiana, who they and I were working together on this, I suppose, and I was extremely grateful for that it was that family and Michael and Michelle at that time, because that was probably my first serious episode of depression. There was pride was well and truly in the way. This wasn't going so well, and I couldn't admit that to myself or to anyone else, that all the grand visions and dreams I had for this business weren't quite eventuating. And I remember a night out the back of the kitchen, actually, I went to go to dinner and sat down against the back fence outside the kitchen in the dark and bawled my eyes out. And it took, I think I nearly waited till everyone had left the kitchen before I kind of went in there, and so it was Michael, or might have been their Gubby at the time, Loretta, who was there, and I think they looked at me and realised that I was pretty bloody upset. That was the first, that anyone knew about it, or any admission that I'd made of it. Realised I needed to do something about it pretty seriously, pretty quickly. So we looked at ways to where I needed to go financially with the business, what I needed to do. They were giving me a lot of day work at the time, which was keeping me afloat. I sort of had to recognise that the business wasn't going to survive, and at the same time get myself sorted out. I did go and see a GP at that point, and I didn't have an immediate connection with the GP, and I'm not sure that gave me any real relief, but they did prescribe some antidepressants, and I took those, and that was it was good. What I found, the biggest thing I found from it was it just leveled out my emotions. It probably numbed me to a sense, but it just leveled out my emotions and took away the highs and the lows. So I didn't get terribly excited about things, but I didn't get so upset about things, and I was able to kind of just get my shit sorted in a sense. Then I went contract harvesting, and it was challenging because I was on the road with a crew of blokes that I didn't know from a bar of soap, but I was busy. I was working, making money. I was feeling like I was useful and getting somewhere. And it's interesting. I often say that the greatest catalyst for change is pain. And from about the day I left school, I reckon Mum has been on my back to go and get an education, go to uni. And after about the first 5 years out of school, and I hadn't gone to uni by then, she sort of gave up. And then she started pushing to go to Marcus Oldham and do a year there as a mature age student. And that pain of that little business experience made me realise that there was a lot I needed to learn and a lot of things I didn't know. And so went to college, and it was one of the best things I've ever done, one of the best investments I've ever made in myself. I learned everything I needed to learn or wanted to learn about business and understanding financials and all those sort of things. So at some point, I actually just stopped taking the antidepressants. It was probably 6 months later, I reckon. I think I was in college, and I sort of finally felt actually feeling pretty good. I think they'd probably been winding the dose back a bit over time. So that was good, and started to get back on the road a bit. I had also Trish and I had started going out, and I'd spent a bit of time back up north again, and had a really good experience up there with on a placement with a consultant that I'd really enjoyed. So I got back to a pretty good place, and then I left college and went back up north, and I got a job with a university up there managing MaiaGrazing station, and that was probably the most challenging 2 years of my life. Probably the worst job I've ever had. It was probably the match not made in heaven, in that I'm a fairly out of the box thinker, and what I learned was that universities and institutions are very much got to fit in the box. So that was very challenging. I did everything I set out to do when I went there. I was obviously quite ambitious, trying to be pretty proactive and take that to that place to be a bit of a leader in the whole game, and leading by example and demonstrating a lot of it was obviously an institution, so demonstrating some of the commercial or the research outcomes that were coming out of the research, putting them into practice at a commercial scale. And we just went on the same page. I had about, people used to turn up out there and ask me who I was answerable to, and there was about 7 different committees, directors, people that I was responding to. They were extremely conservative because they'd had a massive animal welfare issue there 3 years before. And I didn't deal with it very well. In hindsight, looking back, there was a lot of things I could have done better, and that's probably was a big lesson that I learned. And I guess there's a lesson in everything, and that was the biggest thing out of that. But at one point I was responsible for a commercial cattle station and a stud, a Brahman stud that I had set about taking in a completely different direction. In my view, was for the betterment of the industry and for that stud and the whole organisation. And I was pretty passionate about that, very passionate about it, in fact. And I got called into Catherine one day and went to a meeting, and they said, we're taking away your responsibility for the stud. And I was so wild. I was devastated. I couldn't believe the injustice of it. And after a while on the phone there to a bloke, I left there, and I spent the next half an hour looking for the best tree on the highway, basically, to pull on. And I drove myself straight to the hospital. Thankfully, I made it to town. I went to the hospital and rang Trish, I think. I sent Trish a message, and that was, they managed to get me through that, thankfully. Again, just had to take a bit of time out and try and figure out what I was going to do from there. And that was by that point, when I was in Charter Towers, self-harm was never, I'd never even considered that. But by the time I was at MaiaGrazing there and going through some of this shit, like I say, that day, that scared the shit out of me. But I was pretty bloody convinced that that was the best thing to do at the time. And I remember Trish taking a day off work and just getting retired with me that day because it was sometime around that period that she didn't feel safe to leave me at home that day. In hindsight, that's pretty bloody scary to recognise and think back on. Anyway, it all wound up, thankfully. There was a new vice chancellor of the university. He'd come from South Australia, actually from an ag background. He was the first person in the whole organisation that had come across from an agricultural background. And he came out and spent a bit of time there, and he was assessing all the different assets of the university, and he eventually called me up to Darwin and said, look, we don't have any interest in owning a cattle station that has never trained a student for 3 years. So they terminated the lease and made me redundant, and I was very well looked after. And it was the best way it could have ended, actually. I was pretty grateful in the end that was probably the best outcome. and it was about 2 weeks before we got married. So had a beautiful wedding, but I actually, it was probably the only other time I've publicly spoken about it was our wedding, that I explained that what I've been through very briefly to everyone at our wedding, that I've been in some pretty dark places. So kind of gave us a little bit of freedom. And we must have been, But yeah, we got married the year before. Sorry, we were married 12 months before, but I had been through a pretty serious period in 2013, and then that was in 2014 that we ended up. So I'd been obviously up and down and ebbing and flowing quite a bit through there, but not much of it terribly happy. Anyway, got through that. So then we ended 2014, we left MaiaGrazing, and then early 2015, Harry was born, and Trish had 12 months off work, and we sort of had a little bit of freedom. We were applying for jobs up there in management roles, and nothing quite came to fruition. And we just started contracting. It was pretty enjoyable. I really enjoyed the lack of responsibility that I had. All I had to do was do the best job I could do, and take ownership of that, but not be responsible for anything else. So it was kind of a bit of a breath of fresh air. We were tailing lands for a while, and then went fencing, and I was running a spraying crew and driving trucks, and I just wound up a contract that I worked extremely hard for. It was doing insane hours, night and day, trying to help someone really get something going that they'd created. And again, there was people that was challenge. It was the people issues that presented the challenges, and I couldn't find a way around that. And again, I could see myself getting into a pretty dark place. So I wound it up, and I said, I'm done here. And then but I didn't have anything to go to, and I'd committed to helping out some friends of mine, looking after their place for a few weeks. And in hindsight, it was the silliest bloody thing I could have done. I went and I was the only bloke out there basically caretaking, and I wasn't in a good place at all. I used to drive around every day with a 308 on the passenger side, telling myself that it was in case I saw a dingo, but scary thoughts were that I thought about what else I could do with that during that time. And got to a point one night where I didn't know what I was going to do, and I actually picked up the phone and rang a bloke called Dennis Hoiberg, and spoke at our field day last year. And Dennis is a bloody extraordinary man. He's spoken on resilience, and is what he talks about. And he's seen and dealt with some incredibly hard times, in whole communities and with whole communities of people. Anyway, Dennis and I had a yarn that night. I was, bawling my eyes out, probably not making any bloody logical sense at all, but he was the one that I called that night, and had a good yarn too. So I'll be forever grateful to Dennis for that. And actually, probably the only thing that kept me going was my son. Harry was the only one around at the time. I just thought he could be without a dad. So yeah, made it, thankfully. It was bloody hard for Trish and I. Trish is a stoic bugger. She's bloody tough, and Whatever you are, Mary, from it, mate.
Absolutely, yeah, no worries. I mean, this is real, and I'm just so thankful personally for you sharing your story, and it was absolutely wonderful having you, Stu, with me and my family just last week, passing through, leading up to this week. I've been reflecting on a lot of things and my own mental health, and I'd have to say that going through the process and talking with you in the last couple of weeks has helped me enormously, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. And Mary, I'm sure that through the work that you do, you see day in, day out, everyone's got these stories, don't they? It's not, and it's just, we're just lucky to have people like Stuart who has the courage and willingness and openness to share.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very powerful story. Thank you, Stuart. That's wonderful to share that so openly. It's amazing. And I love the way you call it shit, because that's what I talk about in my presentations is shit. We've all got a bucket of shit. Some people have big buckets and some people have small buckets, but we've got to empty that. And it's normal. Everybody's got a bucket of shit. I don't care who they are. Everyone's got a bucket. It just matters that we empty it, and we've got to keep that bucket empty. That's one of the things I talk a lot about. I do talk a lot about shit, but yeah, we all. Everybody has times where it's not the going is not that easy, and
yep.
Yes, sometimes we can get ourselves through it. And Stuart's given some great examples of that, where he managed to get himself through some of those tough times. But there were times where he just went, you know what, I can't carry this bucket of shit myself. I need to empty it. I need to talk to somebody, and that's powerful.
And actually, one of the if I think back to that Charters House period, there's a great mate of mine now, Woodsy from Gundawindi. He spoke at a beef forum in Roma a couple of years before that about his story, and I actually remember him saying he'd done some lessons or training in public speaking. People had said this is a good way to work through some of these things is public speaking, and they said you're not supposed to swear, when you're in public speaking. And he said, "Fuck it." He said, "I swear too much as it is anyway." And you're exactly right, Mary. That it was probably the next note here was that to me, through those times, it felt like you're just in this fucking big black hole and there's no way out. There's no bloody ladder. Someone's pissed off with that. You just can't figure out where you're going to turn next and what you're going to do next. And when you get to that point, you've just got to go and find someone, ring someone, have a yarn to someone, send someone a message. And that's what I would employ anyone to do out of this. If there's anything that comes out of this tonight, is that I'll always be there for anyone. I don't know I don't care if I know you or I don't know you. If you had if I was the person who had the courage to reach out to and send a message to or ring, I absolutely would do that in a heartbeat. And I've certainly talked to had these sort of conversations or talked to people have rung me, and I've just when I'm in that position, the biggest thing I try and do is just shut up and listen. When you finally pluck up the courage to talk about these things and find that within yourself, as the listener, you've absolutely got to shut up and listen. The worst thing that the person on the other end of the phone wants you to do is not be able to shut up on your side, because they just need to unload. You've just got to get it all out. And I know Woody was that person at one stage. Alf Collins was another one. My mate Gihan from Darwin has been extraordinary. He's a fucking dude. And he was an incredible support to me for those few years we were back up north. Kate and JB, those friends I mentioned of mine earlier, they've been extraordinary support to me, and the Moffats, Richard and Victoria. Dowsey, my best mate, the Rowland family from Wombat, and Jeff and Priscilla from Catherine. Actually got back from town, if I'd just try and go on here a bit, but when I got back to town from that place I'd been caretaking, I was at home, back we were camping, and we were living at the time and didn't really have much going on, and my phone rang at about 10 o'clock one morning, and this bloke, Jeff Rowlands, said, "Oh, I'm just need a grader driver for a day. Are you available?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." I didn't have fucking anything going on, so I wasn't about to tell him that I was busy. So I went down and got on the grader for him that day, and then he sort of said, "What are you up to? You know, you got a truck license?" And I said, "Yeah, I do actually." And he said, "Oh, well, you want to do some truck driving for us?" And I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." And again, it was kind of the right people and the right thing at the right time. And I just got in this truck and drove for a few months, and didn't have to worry about too much. They were very easygoing, great to work for. And I don't know, I think it was actually there, and it was at that place where I was caretaking that I first rang and applied for this job, ironically. We just started to think about looking outside the territory for an opportunity, and this job was advertised, and I said to Trish, "You know, that sounds pretty good. That's the sort of thing I'm going to be interested in, and that's what I'd like to be doing." And then I rang the recruitment bloke and had a yarn to him there, and somehow, and then the next week I was still there actually, and he drilled me again, gave me a full bloody psychological interview, I suppose, like those recruitment blokes do, and somehow I bust my way through it, and got through that, and 2 or 3 interviews later, and I was by this point I was then driving trucks in this quarry, and I told them that we'd have put into this job down here, and lo and behold, we got it. And I think we were on the piss after the races, not long before we left up there, and I said to them, you know, I was in a pretty ordinary bloody place, and you rang me that day and asked me to come and drive the grader, and that was, you know, it was kind of what got me going again. It got me back on my feet, gave me something to do, got me busy again. It was a mindless bloody job, carting dirt, but it kept me busy, and paid my way, you know, and then we got this job, and I've just haven't looked back. We couldn't have landed in a better place, couldn't have been more supported by those around us. I don't think anyone, I don't even ever had anyone in my life other than my family has had so much belief in me than Al has, and you know, that's extremely rewarding, motivating, inspiring. What gets me out of bed every day is that someone believes in me and allows me to do what I believe in, I suppose, and what I'm so passionate about. So yeah.
I'll just jump in there too, like, you know, you've been through a huge amount. You hear you've got this fantastic job, this great opportunity. You've been building these skills that allows you to manage, you know, very difficult situations and I guess in a different way, in a calm way, and something, you know, that I've seen your staff there talk about is that they feel they are in a safe place and a supportive place, and I guess that, you know, that's a huge credit to you. But I guess, you know, you've also talked about, you know, your approach to what you do and your approach to agriculture and so forth as being quite a mind shift and helpful for your mental health as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's something that I do talk about a bit nowadays, and it's probably something that I've really come to recognise in the last 12 months, I suppose, and it's this whole conversation and dialogue around conventional agriculture versus regenerative agriculture, and who's right and who's wrong. And I try very hard not to create a divisive conversation there. I don't think that's empowering at all. The whole reason I talk about what we do is to try and help other people understand that, you know, here's an alternative, here's maybe a better way, this may be an option, and particularly through the drought. I mean, it was the reason we ran that first field day, was to try and help people see things from a different perspective. And really, when I've thought about it lately, it actually all comes down to risk and the production risk that is in agricultural businesses. We're all at the mercy of Mother Nature, and she can be a cruel old duck at times. So, you know, through the drought, it was this whole story around feeding cattle versus destocking. And to me, you know, you start feeding cattle and there's no end in sight. I know people that I've mentored through that destocking process within our business, and also other businesses that I do some work with. They all said, when, you know, as soon as they were gone, the massive sigh of relief, the weight off the shoulders, that you know, they'd made a really profound decision that had created some freedom. So that was sort of through the drought, and then now, since the drought's broken, is all the inputs that are going into some businesses in terms of seed and fertiliser and you know, all these other things, I suppose, investments in machinery and so forth, that add this massive level of production risk, and you've got to cover all that before you get to the cream on top. And you know, what we try to do in our business is not spend too much, so that the risk of you know, the overhead risk of the business and the production risk in the business is minimised, I suppose. And then you know, you don't have to make too much, and then it's all upside. So the connection here is that it's the risk that's all largely financial. It's all based around the weather, and we tend to have a very short memory and realise, and you know, forgotten already that it wasn't so long ago that it didn't bloody rain. And it scares the shit out of me that we put everything on the line in a lot of businesses, and in this quest to make as much money as we can, but we've got to make so much money before we make money. And I think it's, you know, I'm quite sure it's the cause of a lot of mental health issues in our industry, is that constant financial risk and pressure. And I suppose I've lived that now, that in this business I don't feel that. I don't ever, you know, where I'm always focused on those three inventories of grass, money and livestock, and I have no qualms having no animals and plenty of cash. And it's paid off for us through the drought. You know, we made so much money in the last 12 months because we made those really tough decisions last year. And our businesses are very low input, our properties. So our production risk is minimised as much as possible. So that's, you know, long-winded way. That's how I bloody make that. Maybe it's a long bow, I don't know, but certainly the principles of regenerative agriculture go a bloody long way to de-risking agricultural businesses, and that the thing that underpins, and RCS talk about the three-legged pot, the grass, money, livestock, and the thing that manages all those is people. And you know, we can make all the money in the world, but if it means we don't have our people because of the financial risk and the pressure that we put on ourselves, then it's all for nothing.
And Mary, I guess, you know, like this is a fairly constant theme, I guess. I mean, everyone's got challenges. Everyone's got, you know, you go through life, you get more damaged, you know. But in terms of these other pressures that, you know, financial pressures specifically in agriculture, that's something that you continuously see or not? And what's your observations with, you see it meet a lot of people?
Yeah, definitely. And those financial pressures can come from the weather, as Stuart pointed out. They can also come from family or relationship breakdown or succession planning. So there's a whole heap of reasons why those financial pressures come in, particularly in agricultural businesses. And it is certainly one of the main things that I see. Yeah, definitely. So if we can manage that, yeah, it's definitely going to be an upside.
So I won't be cutting things off, Stu, but so feel free to jump in and ask Mary some questions. But I wasn't actually aware of a bog mate until a couple of weeks ago, and when I actually looked at the landline episode on you and learned the origins of a bog mate, about you do a huge amount of consulting work in spray drift management, consulting and training and workshops, and but the catalyst for you creating this organisation was really on the back of within a fortnight, a couple of deaths, suicides in Dalby, and it just really struck you, and you actually wrote a letter of which. Tell us a little bit about the origins of the organisation and where you find yourself now.
Yeah, so it did start off, unfortunately, 2 suicides in my area, and it rattled the whole community, as it does, but it was watching the blokes left behind come to terms with it, or struggle to come to terms with the loss of their mates, and a lot of them were ringing me to talk about it, which was great, but I guess it really sat me back to question my own skills or lack of skills in this area, that I didn't know anything about this, and I didn't know what to look for, and I didn't know how to help these blokes. And so I essentially first went looking, because my main job was to travel around Australia, talking mainly to blokes. And I thought, well, maybe I can do a course or something and skill up in this, and know what to say or know what to look for. So that's what I really set out to try and skill myself up. But it just blew my mind. I had no idea that the statistics for rural male suicide in particular were that bad. But the thing that really upset me was the tone of all the stuff that I read. I read all these articles and policies and stuff written by people with qualifications in mental health, and essentially what I was reading anyway was that there's something wrong with country men and we have to change them. And I grew up on a sheep and cattle station in southwest Queensland, and I've worked for the last 15 or 20 years in broadacre agriculture, and that really pissed me off when I saw that the experts saying there's something wrong with these blokes, and I just decided to call bullshit on it. And I sat down, I wrote an article, which I simply called A Bog Mate. And in that article, I've essentially called bullshit on the experts and said, there's nothing wrong with these blokes, you just don't understand them. And you don't understand how they work and how they communicate. And so that's all I did, was sit down and write that article. But it went viral around the world. And because of what I do in the spray space, I've got farmers all over the world that follow me, so quite a few in America and Canada and Europe as well. And I just got so much response from farmers and people on the land all over the world. I was, then asked to do spray workshops, but at the end of it, can you talk about bogged? And then it sort of progressed to, well, the drought sort of buggered the spray workshop part of it, and what the drought didn't bugger, the border closures finished. So then it was like, will you just come and talk about bogged? So I guess this is what I do now, is talk about being bogged. So that's where it really started. Me simply writing an article, didn't actually set out to do anything. I just really sat down to get the shit off my liver about losing these 2 guys and watching their mates struggle to come to terms with it.
It was really the approach that you took. It was about changing the language of it, wasn't it? I mean, this whole thing is about normalising it, right? And that's what tonight's about as well. But that was even in your day job in the whole broadacre agriculture and your consulting and training and so forth in the spraying and spray drift management plans and all these sorts of things. The reason why you would get success and cut through is because how you actually communicated to this audience. So tell us a little bit about where your bog mate is now and what your week consists of. In terms of the few conversations that we've had, I can't believe your schedule and what have you. But tell everyone about the important work that you are doing and where the organisation is now and where you're looking to go?
Well, essentially, when I first got asked to go and speak about it, yeah, there was a roaring drought, so there wasn't much spray work. So I was doing it out of my own pocket, and since it's pretty much become a full-time job, that's not very viable. So it's I've now set it up as a registered charity, and getting some wonderful sponsors on board to help cover the costs of getting me around to these places. But I think the main thing that I'm trying to do with it is boots on the ground where the men are and in their comfort zone, and like you said, in a language that they understand. And I frequently talk about the spray stuff, that there are people out there with much better knowledge in the spray world than me. I just explain it differently. I just peel it back. There's no fluffy bullshit. It's just the nuts and bolts. And I'm simply taking the same approach to this. There's no fluffy stuff. There's no pink shirts or holding hands crap. It is straight between the eyes. This is what it is, and these are the things to look for, and these are the ways we can manage it. So yeah, just no frills, I guess, the sugar-free version.
And when this was only really started about two years ago or so, really, from then to now, is that right?
Yeah, so I think next month it'll be 3 years since we lost those guys. Yeah, so I think it was February 18 that I wrote the article. Yeah, it's just every now and then there's another surge, and I get another influx of emails. But certainly the story on Landline has made it go far and wide, and I'm getting emails from all over the country. Have you got someone in WA who does what you do? Yep, me. You got someone in Tasmania who does it? Yep, me. So yeah, it's a bit of a schedule, but I've obviously been in South Australia for the last week and had some really great events down there. But with the situation there, it's you never quite know which border's going to close. So I've hightailed it out of South Australia, which I'm absolutely devastated about, because I had some really good events lined up for the next week up in the far north, which would have been absolutely fantastic to be at. So very disappointed about that. But yeah, I will go anywhere. And yeah, I just talk about the shit. That's simple. It's shit. Everybody's got it.
Yeah. And do you think, like, I mean, I'd have to say, both of you guys, but I have to say, in the last couple of years, even my close friendship group or what have you are more openly talking about their mental health, whether it be still in code or not. They are doing it, and which I think is an incredibly positive thing. Are you guys sort of experiencing that as well? And I think that's good, because it is about normalizing it, where there is no judgment, and I see it happening in my friendship group. Do you guys?
Yeah, I certainly see a change in certain areas. There are still some areas that are still that very doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. And I guess I get to talk to all of those age groups. Had a really good comment. My favourite comment for the week is an older bloke who turned up to one of the events down near Keith, and he there was a bit of confusion in the start times, but he actually turned up deliberately late, and he came up to me afterwards and he said, I deliberately came late so I didn't have to listen to any fucking mental health talk. And he said, but I'm bloody glad I heard that, because I started late, so he got caught, he got trapped. He planned. Yeah, he got trapped. But yeah, he said, I'm bloody glad I heard that one. So that was good. It's refreshing to see the numbers of men turning up to hear this when they know it's a mental health talk. And there's lots of areas where if you put on a mental health talk, they will not come. You might get 4 blokes, you might get 6 blokes, but yeah, I've had some amazing numbers down there in South Australia and some other events too. So it's encouraging that is changing, that they want to hear it, and they're happy to come along and hear it maybe delivered differently.
What about you, Stu? Do you sort of see through your peers and friendship groups and what have you, just in generally, that we are making progress?
Yeah, mate, certainly. And I guess sometimes it seems like slow progress, but I know how much it takes to have that first conversation with someone. so like I sort of said earlier, there's I've got some close friends and at different times that I've talked through a lot of things with, challenges that they've been having, and and other people in it, but it takes a bloody lot to get to that point to have the courage to talk, and I know that from my own experience, and so I'll be the first person to say it's bloody easy to sit here and tell and me to tell everyone to just pick up the phone and have a yarn to someone, but I know how hard that is to do as well. So if I can help others feel comfortable to talk to me, hopefully that might be something that comes out of tonight. And I don't have all the answers, but I've sort of worked out a few things that will work for me, and definitely talking to someone, whether it's a GP or your mate or anyone else, family. Probably my mum was probably one of the first people that I spoke to about it. And part of that is, and it was the same for me, I just had to get over myself and get over my own pride and ego and all the shit that Mary's just been talking about. Get over that, and if you're not fucking feeling well, go and have you under someone, and basically that was what I had to get over, and the point I had to get to. And I suppose it got harder the more times it kept coming up, the harder it got, because I just felt like I just couldn't find a solution. I couldn't find an outcome.
Yeah.
And I still don't think I do have a solid outcome. I'm probably more aware now when I'm overdoing it, and there's times when I go a bit too hard, and I know I've got to pull up and slow down. And there's some fundamental things there. One is eating well, and I mentioned Trish earlier, and probably haven't given her enough acknowledgement, but Trish has been an extraordinary support to me, and an amazing wife for 7 years now, and including me being in hospital for bloody 7 or 8 weeks a few years ago. And she's just bloody, she's still there. It's fucking extraordinary, actually. I wouldn't have hung around for me, but anyway, she has, thankfully. And so I don't eat well when I'm the worse I feel, the less I eat, which is the worst thing that you can do. Or I start eating absolute rubbish. And so she now just starts shoving healthy food in front of me, bloody spinach. Can't stand the shit, but she makes me eat it, thank God. And I'm very healthy, and we eat a very diverse diet. So I really recognise the importance of good food. Sleep is a real big thing for me. I know when I've overdone it, I need to just pull up and have a good bloody sleep in, and it's hard for Trish. And I feel, we've had to talk about it, because I feel guilty that I'm passed out in the bedroom for a couple of hours recharging the batteries, and she's got the kids on the weekend, and I feel like I should be doing my bit. So we have an arrangement now where I sleep in one day and she sleeps in the other day. So we worked it out. But she knows how important that sleep is for me. That's how I recharge the batteries, and that's how I re-energize myself. So there are probably a couple of things. Hopefully that helps a few people. There are a few ways that I've found to manage through some of these times. But the worse it is, the more serious the help is that you need. And don't let it get that bad. I suppose having under someone before when it doesn't feel normal, the way you're feeling doesn't feel normal, go and start having you under someone then, so it doesn't get that bad, I guess. And
I think the onus isn't just on that person as well. To reach out. I think the onus is on everyone to, if they see their mate or friend or family member or whoever struggling, is for you to reach out to them or find a way to connect. And it's not necessarily talking about mental health, it's that spending time with people. Mary, you talked quite a bit about this, and I've seen a couple of videos, etc. And you're talking about men learning how to communicate, and learning how to heal, and learning how to learn. So it's not something that all of a sudden you flick the switch and you're on the path. Stu, this is something that you've been managing for 20 years, isn't it? So, it's being aware of it, I guess. But Mary, what would be some of your, takeaway messages? Because we should let everyone get off to bed tonight, and Stu needs his beauty sleep. So, Mary, what have you got as a few parting words?
Well, I guess I had a question for Stu, that when you were in that low spot, in that bog hole, did people notice and did people reach in? Because I strongly encourage people to look out for the signs and symptoms and to reach in, because I know a lot of organisations and people say, "I'll reach out when you're feeling low or depressed or bogged," but I encourage people to reach in. Did people reach in to you? And if they did you accept it, or hadn't you recognised it then?
I don't think they did, Mary, actually. Some for one reason or another. I don't know, maybe I can bullshit too well and didn't let on that things weren't so good. Trish knew, and probably Mum. I think we're probably the only people that really knew. So no, I don't actually think that. I don't recall, but I do. But I talked about it. I suppose I brought it up with, like I say, with Gian and some of my really close mates. And I was thinking about it there a minute ago. When I say have a yarn to people or have a yarn to someone, and what I probably try now is. There's a really great communication triangle, hierarchy triangle thing that Jill RegenAg talks about, and it's about the levels of trust and the depth of a conversation, and we all start with all the small talk, and so I always say, hey, how are you, mate? How you getting on? And no one's going to say, oh, mate, I feel like shit right then, but have a yarn, you talk about things, and then I'll come back around it and say, how you getting on? And it's once you kind of got to go through those layers of that communication triangle to get to that level where, look, I could never been that good, but you can't just bring someone and say, how are you, mate? And then they're not just going to say, oh, I feel like shit. But so that's probably something I think that we just all need to consider, I suppose, and think about. And so to answer your question, for whatever reason, I don't recall close friends necessarily reaching out to me. It was probably more once I'd felt like I'd got to that level of trust in the conversation with some close friends that I was comfortable to raise it and talk to them about it. And it's extraordinary how many of my close friends have all been through similar things, and you know them for years before you hear about it. So that's why, in terms of normalising the conversation, that's what it really, we've all been through some shit, and we've all just got to be willing to or just try and be comfortable to talk about it, as just like the old flat tire analogy, that you can't go anywhere until you fix it. And so having the trust in each other, I suppose, or the faith in each other to look out for each other and be willing to have those conversations.
Yeah, well,
and help each other.
Really good, really about listening, and I think men are very keen to fix things and offer solutions and answers. It is a skill you've got to learn to listen, to do that listener.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I'd have to say that if tonight's objective was really about chalking up some notches or whatever to help normalise this, I think we've achieved that. And Mary, thank you so much for all the work that you do. I've heard people describe the work that you're doing as actually saving lives every day, and I've absolutely got no doubt about it. And I encourage anyone that is on the call tonight or gets the recording of this or what have you to search Are You Bogged, Mate and Landline, to go and watch that 15-minute little story on the organisation. And Stu, huge thank you to you, mate, for sharing. And one of the comments on the Facebook string before I got swallowed by the internet gremlins early. I don't know whether I got to read it or not. I was talking to myself, but it was basically saying that, you know, when you're able to talk about your mental health, you know, you're a voice for so many people right now who are unable to talk about theirs. And I've, you know, I absolutely believe that, and I'm incredibly thankful to have you in my life as a friend, as a client, and all the rest of it. And after the webinar, there'll be some material come through with a bunch of different resources, and including some resources that I wasn't aware of. One's called the Mary Help Me Out. What, sorry?
Virtual psychologist, which is a text-based service.
The virtual psychologist, that's right, text-based service. I wasn't aware that was available. I've got a few friends that I'll be passing that on to myself, which is a free service, 24 hours a day, and free to anyone with a rural postcode. So I just think that, you know, that's another avenue which may not have been available to you like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, Stu, but that's something. So with these new services and everything that are and other ways and means for people to access supports, it's a really positive thing. And for everyone out there, you know, reach in, and thanks everyone.
I would just would add to that the shirt, the trademark shirt. Those boys are doing an amazing thing in the you know, in the city, in the tradies, but also the shirts are all over the bush now, and those boys started in the bush, and the TAX Foundation has a text-based service as well. It's a great thing. The shirts are, they say on the back, this is a conversation starter, and that's what it's all about. So we have a bit of fun wearing them, but obviously a much deeper meaning behind wearing them. And I just wanted to say thank you, Cole, and thank you to Maia for giving me the opportunity. You know, like I said, I volunteered to do this, but I know the values that sit behind MaiaGrazing, and how much more than a software company that it is, and the effort that you guys are going to with all these webinars and to help people in so many different ways. And like you said at the start, hopefully this is one of the most meaningful ways. And my whole intention of doing the yarn tonight was to try and help someone and help others. So thank you, mate.
Not a problem. Well, everyone's gone a long way to achieving that. So thanks for being part of it, and let's see what happens from here. But let's not just draw a line under that. Let's just keep going. So thanks everyone for joining.
And thank you, Mary, for everything you do.
Yeah. Okay. Signing off. Go to bed.
Thanks, Carl. Good on you, mate. Thanks, Mary.
Thanks, Stuart.